Vince Coglianese, editorial director at the Daily Caller, joins me now on Skype to talk about today's impeachment proceedings. Vince, welcome back. Always good to speak with you. Ahead of next week's transition of power, how is this discussion of impeachment, how is it affecting both President Trump and President-elect Biden? Let's talk about that.
Well, I think President Trump feels persecuted here. I mean, that was kind of evident, I think, in his statement that he gave from Texas in the last 24 hours, that he thinks this is a continuation of an effort to take him out. There's no question that over the course of his presidency, there has been an establishment effort really to knock him out, and definitely in the early days of his presidency to consider him a completely illegitimate president that extended through actually much of his administration from his political opponents. On Joe Biden's side of the aisle, I think Joe Biden has a delicate dance here. One, he's trying to indulge the passions of his base of the Democrat Party, but also he has to realize that he's about to become president of the United States, not of a single party. And the message that he's been running on and the message he says he's going to present at the inauguration is one of unity. So his job at this moment is to figure out what is the best possible path forward to bring together all of the voices of this country in such a way that they can have faith that this government serves them.
Well, Vince, as you know, there are members of both parties who actually support impeachment, including Representative Liz Cheney, the third highest ranking Republican in the House. Can we talk about that and what you think that signifies for the GOP?
Well, it signifies that there's absolutely a split in the Republican Party right now about what the future is, and also a bit of a split on how to sort of get the base of the Republican Party together. I don't think that there's anyone who looked up on the events of last week and forgives them. Not a single person. That's across both parties in all of Washington. Everyone was very upset with what took place in the Capitol. And some Republicans have taken it a step further and demanded the impeachment of the president of the United States. Now, the counterpoint to that, and what many Republicans are saying, is this will only serve to inflame a country that's already been inflamed further. Last week's events in the Capitol were not the first instances of political violence that we've seen play out, especially over the last 4 years. Recall, the inauguration of President Trump in 2017 was accompanied by tons of street violence. Many businesses damaged throughout the city, a limousine set on fire right outside the Washington Post building, 200 people arrested for the rioting, and many cops were injured. Later on, of course, we saw the shooting of Republican congressmen on a baseball field in Alexandria, Virginia, including the grievous injuring of Steve Scalise, and that was done by a supporter of Bernie Sanders. There's just been far too much political violence in the country, and I think Washington needs to figure out how to take a step back and confront that and have cooler heads prevail.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people are talking about that. Bring the temperature down. Vince, as you know, also lawmakers, as you mentioned, from both parties are calling for accountability after last week's riots. But what form do you think that should take?
Well, the accountability, first and foremost, should be presented to the people who broke the law. Again, this is one of those areas where I don't think anybody disagrees. There's some disagreement over the way that we should consider that law breaking and how far we should take it. So, for instance, there are all sorts of laws that are already on the books regarding federal trespassing and breaking the law, and certainly injuring cops. Those things are all covered well by federal law and should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. We discourage that type of activity by actually enforcing the law wherever it's presented, regardless of political party. The problems come with some lawmakers, including people like Chuck Schumer, are trying to stretch the definitions even further to say that anyone who stood inside of the Capitol, this would include grandmas perhaps who were waving American flags, of which you can find pictures of that, people who did trespass in the Capitol but didn't seem to perpetrate any acts of violence themselves. They're being considered domestic terrorists by some corners of the Democrat Party and are being said that it should be added to the no-fly list. That is a debate that is moving very quickly without much nuance. And when it comes to the rights of American citizens, we should be careful before we start labeling them broadly domestic terrorists. So it is a tough conversation going on in Washington right now, but one that requires, I think, sober minds to actually move forward.
Absolutely. Vince, always appreciate you coming on. Thanks a bunch. Vince Coglianese, editorial director at the Daily Caller. Thanks again, Vince.